Let's go!
In some of the biggest news that dropped over the past like 24 hours, there's been some interesting restructuring at Capcom and a lot of executive tenure over the past few years leaving the company. After the conclusion of Dragon's Dogma 2, we saw that Hideaki Itsuno of Power Stone and Capcom vs. SNK 2 and Devil May Cry and Dragon's Dogma fame recently left the company. And it was kind of surprising that Itsuno, who was kind of one of like the last biggest names at Capcom, game designers and all, was actually leaving. So it was like, whoa, that's sort of crazy. Now, here's the thing. This isn't entirely new, and this is sort of a repeating situation. You might remember another thing that I talk about every once in a while, that we're all wondering what the heck's happened to Mega Man, and I don't really know, because a couple years ago, this happened back in 2023. The Mega Man series like lead producer left Capcom. It's a key figure to Keiji Inafune's departure back in 2010. He was a pivotal role in Mega Man 11, X-Dive, all the Legacy collections, and the biggest, most remarkable accomplishment, which is the Mega Man Battle Network Legacy Collection. Those were all pretty much his games. Didn't make all of them, but he was sort of like the main Capcom dude that was into Mega Man. He left. He actually left the company back in 2023, so it's already been a couple of years since that's happened. The dude that was responsible for Mega Man, whatever the hell was going on with Mega Man in the background, wasn't necessarily working out, and he kind of peaced out. I had like a low-level prediction when we heard that Itsuno was leaving Capcom, because that was really big news. My low-level prediction was that they likely wanted him to do something else. Huge assumption that going back to Dragon's Dogma and effectively quote-unquote fixing many of the issues that were Dragon's Dogma in its initial release was probably something Itsuno really wanted to do over time, but then he took on a variety of other projects, Devil May Cry, all that kind of stuff, like to truly see out the vision of what Dragon's Dogma could be as a game. Even though DD2 had its own plenty share of technical issues and some gameplay design issues and all that kind of stuff. Just not really a game for me personally. A game for a lot of people. Anyway, he left after the completion of that project, after it was released. So the game did not even get any DLC or anything like that. So it was pretty fascinating. It was my assumption that, I wonder if this is a situation where he wanted to do something different and unique and was sort of being held down by his quote-unquote franchises, right? I was wondering if this was the case, because this happens several times. These people get sort of stuck into this kind of, I would say, role. The expectations were likely, hey, where's DMC6? My assumption was that he didn't want to be typecast to do specifically Devil May Cry. Capcom is a big global company now, man. Devil May Cry is a game, DMC5 is a game that sold like, I don't know, almost 10 million copies or something like that. Wildly successful game. Of course, everyone wants a follow-up. It might not have been his biggest desire. His condition was that, hey, if I do this Dragon's Dogma 2 thing, you know, you get to let me make a game, and things probably changed, you know? I'm just gonna say it out right now. That is my headcanon. But it won't be my headcanon anymore, because just the other day, Hideaki Itsuno of Devil May Cry Dragon's Dogma fame explains why he left Capcom and why he has formed a new studio called Lightspeed Studios for a multitude of action games in Japan. So we don't have to sit here and dwell on whether or not those things were likely true or not. I'm assuming a lot of this stuff is going to get answered in here, and this isn't a massive shakeup for Capcom. However, several things that have been revealed about the creation of Itsuno-san and his new Lightspeed Studios are pretty interesting and lead to some questions like, man, what is going on at Capcom if that's the case? Where's Capcom out right now as a company? It's not talking shit about the company at all. It's just that they have a lot of stuff in development. They're becoming much bigger. They have a lot of games that are coming out almost constantly, some with issues and others mostly appeasing an audience and making most people very happy. The bigger thing is that Capcom has like a goal of what they're doing and where they're going, and it might not line up with a lot of the old heads at Capcom, is my assumption. So let's just read into it and see exactly what's going on. When it comes to blockbuster video games, Capcom is the modern gold standard. Over the past 7 years, RE and Monster Hunter has produced hit after hit, seemingly impossible pace, regularly appearing in Game of the Year lists and annual profits to match. Yeah, Capcom, for anybody that knows, is doing better than ever right now, and the majority of their games are kind of being received better than ever right now. Monster Hunter is sort of in a unique situation. Multitude of reasons for the company's ongoing purple patch, not least that it boasts one of the most inviolable war chests chests of franchises of any game company. True. But it's that last bit of indirectly persuaded one of its most experienced directors to quit last year. Because when you're on such a strong roll revitalizing classic IPs like Street Fighter, Onimusha, Devil May Cry, there's understandably little incentive to assign your most experienced creators to original IP built from scratch. With 2012, Itsuno created one of Capcom's last wholly AAA single-player franchises. Arguably the next didn't arrive until the Kunitsugami. A 30-year company veteran, Itsuno is best known as the director behind the last 3 DMC games, Dragon's Dogma, and classic fighting games such as Power Stone, Rival Schools, Capcom vs. SNK. Yes, he's pretty much like the last of the executive old tenure of dudes from the 90s, and we've always given the dude his flowers. His games are just godlike. Granted, he was given the very bad assignment of make Devil May Cry 2 work in 6 months. He made Devil May Cry 3 to apologize for that. It came as a surprise when celebrated designer opted to end his time at the company last year, followed by the release of another title from the Capcom hit conveyor belt, the RPG sequel Dragon's Dogma 2. However, approaching his mid-50s, Itsuno contemplated his future and decided he wanted to spend the remaining years of his career creating something new, rather than more sequels to franchises that he perfected. Yes, I think me and Simmons literally had this conversation, and we talked about it on stream of Itsuno leaving a little while ago. We're like, man, why would he leave? Probably because they wanted him to make DMC 6. And it's probably because he doesn't have much time left as a game developer, and he likely wants to do something that isn't just tied down. That was our bold assumption at the time. Let's see if it's actually true. For me, based on my age, this is my last chance. Itsuno told VGC during a recent visit to the new studio, Lightspeed Japan, where he was given the opportunity to build an entirely new team and project owner Tencent. Wow, so Tencent has a... Wow, that's a lot of money. The gaming industry has decreased the number of AAA releases, and I was asked to create a new AAA. I'm not young anymore. So more than now, it's the right moment. It's more like, this is my last chance to challenge myself. He continued, for Capcom, creating DMC and Dragon's Dogma sequels is the top priority. And keeping in mind that making a game takes 4 or 5 years, that might be my last big opportunity. Damn, it sounds like it's literally exactly what happened. Before you realize you're working on Devil May Cry 6 or 7, it's not like I don't want to make them. I do, but it's hard to balance the time it takes with personal satisfaction of making them with Devil May Cry 5 and Dragon's Dogma 2. I already did what I wanted to make. Itsuno is now leading the Japanese arm of Tencent Lightspeed Studios, where his new team is building a AAA action game. On Tuesday, Lightspeed announced the opening of a second Japanese studio in Osaka, the hometown of Capcom, and hired several other Devil May Cry and Street Fighter veterans. This is where the story gets kind of insane. Who did he pull from Capcom? What's going on here? So speaking to VGC at Lightspeed Osaka ahead of the news, Itsuno said that around a third of the studio's 40 employees had come from Capcom, and he believed his first title at the new company would benefit from their shared experience. Very few studios in Japan are taking on the challenge of building original AAA IP. That's exactly what we're doing. And he is not wrong, dude. It's also the fact that Capcom, of all companies, the only other company outside of Capcom that has so many dormant IPs that would likely find great success if they did some shit with them, is friggin' Nintendo, my dude. To me, it's sort of a rough spot for a lot of game devs because there's a lot of Japanese companies that have so many dormant IPs that haven't been used in so long. And Capcom likely has a war chest, like they said, of things that would make money, but are they eventually going to do it? You know what I mean? I don't really blame Itsuno for his situation of wanting to get out of there, but it's also the fact that as fans of Capcom stuff, like, how is there still not a Mega Man game? How is there still not like a modern day take on Final Fight? How is there still not a brand new Phoenix Wright game in the year like 2025? Like, we kind of want Capcom to do what Sega is doing right now and getting a lot of these things made. The crazy part, before we continue, is that Capcom did that shit under the direction of Kenji Itofune. Sort of drip fed a whole bunch of Capcom IPs all over the place. Strider, Bionic Commando, yada, 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 Lost Planet, all this stuff, and kind of got a whole bunch of developers that were much cheaper than getting internal Capcom to make them. A lot of those games existed, and it was like, yeah, a lot of these old franchises came back. Cool. However, the guidance of that was not necessarily great, and most of those games and their quality was not necessarily good. Strider was one of like the better ones in like DuckTales, you know what I mean? Lost Planet 3. Did I say 2? Lost Planet 3. Yeah, there was an initiative from Capcom like 12 years ago to make a whole bunch of their older IPs into something. And they did that. They currently are doing that. Well, they did what Sega is currently doing. Now we're sort of like wondering if it can happen again. We're sort of like asking, hey, can these IPs come back? That's where a lot of people are as Capcom fans right now, because things have just been gone for 5 to 7 to 8, 9, 10 years or some shit. Most companies seem to be avoiding AAA space right now due to a market volatility. So what makes you confident you can build a successful IP in that space? The goal of the studio is to create a game and IP for consoles. I believe that unless you make a AAA quality level, it doesn't become even an option for users. I will say right now how much I disagree with that. My dude, Peak sold like 10 million copies in like a few weeks. It's not like a game being specifically super expensive looking is a thing that necessarily makes it seem worth it nowadays, right? There's a ton of games that look big and expensive, but are they actually good? Well, that's a heavy question. So I don't know with the modern audience that a AAA quality level game, making it not even an option for users, that if something is like a little bit less mega budget, like some cheaper games that maybe didn't cost as much to make could easily find just as much success as long as the game is fun and it has like all these hooks and good stuff about, I don't know. That's just my personal take on that kind of stuff, you know? So after gathering a lot of information, I thought about creating a game with AAA quality that becomes the first choice for players. Even with AAA games, there are several budget sizes though. So I'm taking the challenge of creating one that doesn't need a huge budget to develop. It sounds like he wants to make an Expedition 33. Granted, he quit before Expedition 33 was out. And no, Expedition 33 is not AAA. The idea is that they want to create a AAA experience for a game that costs a fraction of the budget. And that's what Expedition 33 literally is, my dude. That game is literally a game that did not cost that much to make, really, comparatively speaking. With what they had, with what the budget they had, they killed it, bro. They made a game that felt way better than the majority of like big scale RPGs that are out there and shit. It's like, whoa, holy shit. I think it also is sort of poignant that he was making this decision and making this company over the past year, while a game like Expedition 33 happened and found the success that it did. That's my interpretation on that. So even if you prefer refer to the project as AAA, it sounds like you've been sensible in terms of budget and the scale of the team. Yeah, I hate this term, dude. Even the interviewer is like, so what are you talking about? My style of making games, first of all, is to release the game. We have a plan. We try not to go over budget. Normally, if you have a huge budget, the release gets delayed. It's because we worked with just the right amount of budget in my experience. Okay, so that's a lot of experience from working with Capcom is why he feels that way. Too much budget almost leads to more problems. Is making games more efficiently a key differentiator in what we're seeing currently in terms of the struggles with Western publishers compared to Japanese companies like Capcom and Sega, which seem to get games out much faster and cheaper. As a director, releasing the game is the most important thing. In order to do that, you need to control the deadlines and budget for the company that is investing the money. If you don't align properly, you get delays, and increase in budget, lower quality than expected. And then you have to increase the cost to reach the desired quality. More than Capcom, it's the development team that balances and controls that. Yeah, and and again, it sounds like he wants to be a part of a smaller, more concise, more focused development team, and something that isn't as big as Capcom. In all honesty, I don't blame him for leaving Capcom, because Capcom is just getting bigger and bigger. They just built another friggin' building that has an entire multiple dev teams all over it to keep producing games so that Capcom can put out like 3 big games a year and even smaller games over the time. Like, bro, like Capcom is doing so much right now. So it makes sense. This is all lining up. You've announced a new Osaka studio to complement your existing Tokyo. Osaka is the home of your previous employer, Capcom. Why is Osaka a great place to make games? That's a hard question. In my opinion, Tokyo, Osaka, or even San Francisco, the place isn't important. In my case, I have many connections in Tokyo and Osaka to create core team with experience in AAA games. Also, I can go to the office from home. He said making a Japanese-style action game. What defines a Japanese-style action game? That's a good question. You mentioned 3 key hires in your announcement. This is crazy. Devil May Cry writer Toshihiro Nakakawa, DMC and Street Fighter character designer Daigo Ikeno, who just did artwork for the Capcom Fighting Collection 2. Daigo Ikeno is now working at a new studio. He ain't doing any more work for Capcom. And veteran Capcom illustrator fucking Bengus, Marvel vs. Capcom legend. Reminder, Bengus has been doing artwork for Capcom fighting games since forever. And it seems like he won't be involved in that kind of stuff anymore. They aren't freelance. I think they have been freelance in the past. I think most Capcom artists like that have been freelance, but now they're working at light speed with Itsuno, so they're not going to be working on future projects and stuff like that. They're no longer Capcom employees, dude. That's crazy. Although we're a new studio working on a new game, it's good to be able to work with people who I trust. I've been working with Nakakawa for decades, since DMC2. He's one of those core members who understands me very well. He worked as a freelance scenario writer, and he came when I called him. If we mix taste and his taste, I believe we can make a great game together. Daigo Ikeno also participated as an art director at the same time. Bengus-san has a very high level of understanding and is a very unique guy. He was legendary designer at Capcom. Yes. they were. It's all about a sense of trust. We know exactly what each of us wants. And it's not just these three people. I also added some other people I worked with before at Capcom. Even though this is a new studio, I've gathered these people who I trust to make sure this is going to be a successful game. 1/3 of the team is made up of people I previously worked with. The new team members are also great, as well as members who already worked at Lightspeed. They're also great. I gathered a team where everybody is great. It's been 6 years since you released your last character action game. Now that you're returning to the genre, have you taken any learnings of games released since then? So after DMC5, many single-player games were releasing, leaving aside whether they were a hit or not. I don't have any particular thoughts on games of that style. There were many games with a style between Dark Souls and Devil May Cry, but there was nothing too surprising. I just got more impacted by games outside of that range, like the recent Indiana Jones game. That's fair, because Indiana Jones of what it's providing as a game is pretty different than the typical modern FPS share. I see where he is going with that. The Indiana Jones game doesn't really fall into line of what a modern first-person shooter, big budget first-person shooter sort of does. It seems like increasingly every action game is a Souls-like. Are you aware of the oversaturation, and is that something you want to put that puts you off of entering it? I did create a company to make a high-end version of existing games with a similar gameplay, story, and character design. I came to the studio to create an action game with a different value gameplay than the existing ones. I appreciate their contribution, but I'm not going to create the same thing. Yeah, and that's like, again, why is so many things as Souls-like? Why is so many things like have Souls-like mechanics in it? Because they sell. There is a huge gap of time in between FromSoft releases that will sell anywhere between 10 to 30 million copies. And when that time exists, there is other times for Souls-likes to scoop in and try something a little different, but not entirely different, right? They still feel like they are Souls-likes to a certain degree. First time you held an interview after leaving Capcom, why'd you decide it was the right time to leave after 30 years? Let me drink some coffee for this, man. Holy hell. For me, it's my age. This is my last chance. The gaming industry has decreased the number of AAA releases, and I was asked to create a new AAA by Lightspeed. I'm not young anymore, so more than that now. It's the right moment. It's more like this is my last chance to challenge myself. For Capcom, creating DMC and Dragon's Dogma sequels is always going to be the top priority, and keeping in mind that making a game takes 4 to 5 years. This might be my last big opportunity. You don't want to spend your remaining years making Devil May Cry and Dragon's Dogma, and this is pretty much like the entire thing we came down to. We were talking about this a year and a half ago when he quit, and it's like, dude, I bet you this guy finished DD2, he got to see his vision of DD2, and then Capcom was like, all right, so make DMC 6, and the dude is like nearing 60, and he's like, bruh, yep, that's it. Before you realize you're working on making the Devil May Cry 6 or 7, it's not like I don't want to make them, I do, but it's hard to balance the time that it takes with personal satisfaction of making them. Of 5 and DD2, I already did what I wanted to make. So at what point exactly did you decide you wanted to leave? I had several talks while I was working on Dragon's Dogma 2. Because that game probably, he started working on Dragon's Dogma 2, my dude, right after DMC 5 was out. And that game still took like 5 years to come out. But at the time, I didn't even think of leaving when making that game. I wanted to finish it, and after release, there was still some work to do, so I decided to go into the new studio once I was done with all that. Yeah, DD2 was like development for still a very long time because it's a high fidelity, open world like action game, you know? How do you reflect on DD2? Critically, it went very well, but there were a lot of divisive reactions from fans. Ooh, this is a tough question for the guy that made it. If it sells at this level, all good. Meaning that if the game was loved by so many, it's good. I made the game not like a Nintendo one to be liked by all the people, but for a certain type of audience. So it's normal for some people outside that target audience that don't like the game. However, people who enjoyed the game really loved it. I appreciated the details of the work. I'm very proud of it. Dude, that is literally my relationship with Dragon's Dogma. That is literally my relationship with that series from DD1. And I love Itsuno's games. Almost all of his games I'm just a huge fan of, dude. But my feelings on DD2 are the exact same as DD1. I go through the exact same process all over again when playing Dragon's Dogma 2, where it's like, I see why some people will really dig this shit. Even DD1, I see that. But this is not for me. Sega's president, Shuji Utsumi. Ooh, that's great. Damn, good interviewer. Who wrote this shit? Good shit to Andy. Good shit to Andy Robinson. Damn, making the comparison immediately to what Sega's doing over right now with its new CEO. Recently credited the company's modern success as taking a global first approach to game creation. How are you approaching game creation at light speed? Are you targeting a particular audience, like with Dragon's Dogma, or aiming more broadly? By the way, the same thing also happened to Capcom back in like 2016, 2017. Capcom became a much more global company. Games that could be made for like wide range audiences, which gave us things like Devil May Cry and Resident Evil 2 and Monster Hunter World and Resident Evil 7, you know? When he talks about the audience, I don't think about country, nationality, genre, or so forth. But people who enjoy that playstyle. Capcom is a company that has targeted worldwide since the beginning with Street Fighter and other games. It becomes natural to target worldwide. The thought of let's create a game that hits worldwide is intrinsic, with the exception of rival schools. There are many games that can be fun to play, but for action games, it's more universal. I keep in mind to create scenarios and characters not to be hated by a specific region. That's what Sega is doing, for example. It's also what Capcom and my team have been doing since the very beginning. Yeah, to make games for everybody. Would you like to work on another fighting game RPG in the future? For example, you said in the past you'd like to make another Capcom versus SNK. I do want to make a fighting game like CVS, but now I'm neither at either company. If they license it to me, though, I want to make Capcom vs. SNK 3. I want to make fighting game. And it's the top of my list of games I want to make. Nice! Damn, that's exciting. Like, Itsuno is comparable to, like, Sakurai in terms of his vision of what fighting games can be, to what Sakurai's vision of what Smash Brothers was. He has a really unique take on what fighting games are, and almost every single fighting game that Itsuno has directed or been a part of are really different, dude. From like Rival Schools to Power Stone to Capcom vs. SNK, like a lot of his fighting game takes in the late 90s, early 2000s are really different. I do want to make an RPG as well, but I just made one, so it's not like I want to make one right now, maybe after some time. Capcom's enjoying one of the most successful periods in history. Do you think it could be a victim of its success like you if it doesn't give its experienced creators more freedom to create wholly original games? Great question. In my case, I'm 55 and I happen to get this opportunity. For young people, working on a sequel is a great experience. They can learn a lot in creating the next games. The people working on the sequels right now are extremely good, so the young people can learn from them. Yeah. You need to pass the torch at some point, dude. You're creating an original action game. Presumably, Capcom will continue Devil May Cry. Will it be strange competing with that? I'm extremely proud of DMC5, and I don't think I can improve upon it. So competing with a new IP is going to be hard. But at the same time, after making DMC4, I thought it was going to be impossible to create something better. And I think I managed it. It was the same thing with Dragon's Dogma 2. I thought it was going to be impossible to make something better than the first one, so who knows. Did you leave any advice to the DMC team when you left? Officially, I didn't give any, but on a personal level, I wish good luck in person to the members I know. I still go drinking with some of them, of course. In a twist of fate, I'm interviewing the original DMC director, Kamiya, later today. Wow. Kamiya is the guy that created the character action genre, bro. Devil May Cry 1 is the defining game that sort of is like the character action game right next to Ninja Gaiden with Itagaki-san. Do you think you'd collaborate with Kamiya in the future? Two directors working together are going to fight for sure. It sounds fun. We would be getting into fights. We are the same generation, and it sounds fun, but it would not work. Yeah, I'd imagine. More than working together, maybe I can be in charge of a part, and he could be in charge of another one. It'd be complicated. We have different styles. I'm strict, but he also is in a different way. It'd be tough. Yeah. They have the same goals, but getting to their goals is very different. Do you have any questions for Kamiya? Please tell him not to release his game at the same time as ours. We started development at the same time, so I'd like him to have at least 3 months between the release date. I have no problem with the announcement date, but let's avoid overlapping on the screening period for Game of the Year. That's hilarious. It doesn't sound like the parting of these developers was in any ill will or anything like that. And what everything that Itsuno-san is saying is absolutely true. I'm actually happy. I think in this situation, we're gonna get multiple games now. We're gonna get something completely original from these dudes, which is going to be awesome. It's gonna take a while for it to come out, but the tenure and the folks that are involved are pretty big, man.